Yo, so Zenless Zone Zero is releasing on July 4th, and that is right around the corner, and shortly after a competitor in the form of Wuthering Waves was recently released. And that game is doing really well and has actually exceeded the expectations that were put upon it. So, can Zenless Zone Zero compete with some of these upper echelon gacha games? Considering they are a Hoyoverse game, they got some pretty big shoes to fill. I mean, Honkai Star Rail and Genshin Impact, the two most successful and most profitable gacha games in the world right now, are also made by Hoyoverse. So, can Zenless Zone Zero compete? Let's talk about this. So I think it's important to mention that some of the early closed beta testing for Zenless Zone Zero was not exactly well received. The TV system, for example, was kind of mind-numbingly boring. Like, it just wasn't very fun and interesting or like tasteful in a way. Now, there are some really cool things about the story, and I think that they try to do something different than they normally do with how they present the story. Some of that are through these voice acted, like kind of like almost like a glorified manga style like way of telling the story. It wasn't like reading a manga, but it was kind of like seeing these things on screen, these images on screen, while having really good voice acting to kind of carry the story a bit. It was different than what they normally do. Now, I personally prefer like actual cutscenes, but the way that they're doing this probably means that they can afford more voice acting, and so it's possible we'll see more voice acting in this game, even for maybe side quests, than we were seeing in some of the other games, where like with Honkai Star Rail or Genshin Impact, for example, a lot of the main story are voice acted and a lot of the side quests aren't. And so what I'm hoping is they can save some money in the main story production and end up putting like more money towards voice acting pretty much all of their missions, because if you make the main story or you make these missions boring and you have the TV system acting the way it was before, it's not going to be very fun or interesting. However, I think it's also important to say, in the most recent closed beta test for Zenless Zone Zero, it was actually a lot better. The TV system was very improved. It was still there to some degree, but they switched things up a bit, and it wasn't not nearly as bad as it was before. So they are showing improvements, and just like with a game like Wuthering Waves, if you complain about these things in the closed beta test, that's what they're there for, dude. If something's not working right or people aren't enjoying it, you gotta voice yourself about it. And that's what we did, and we saw change. And that's very good. They're willing to show these changes, but will they continue to do this after the game launches? It's a little bit tough to say right now. And let's be honest here. The most important thing for Zenless Zone Zero's success, the thing that's going to carry the game, is the combat. And the combat is pretty damn good, I'll tell you what. Shoot, dude. I mean, those parries, I mean, the dodges, the fast acting, fun, in your face, nuts to butts, balls to the walls, action combat. That is what we want, and that is what we get with this game. It looks stellar, and the characters have these unique abilities that are like really well done and really well thought out. Like, Nicole is walking around with a briefcase, which reminds us of like kind of like Himiko. Like, Himiko's walking around with a really wide, it almost looks like a guitar case that she's walking around with, like just like a really big briefcase looking thing, and it's got all this weaponry and stuff like that going on. Like, Himiko brings out these fat saws in Honkai Star Rail and all kinds of goofy stuff, and Nicole is whipping out like actual like machine guns and stuff like that out of like her suitcase, bro. Like, that is super cool and unique and fun and interesting, and that's the type of stuff we want to see. Innovative, fun, beautiful, interesting characters that have really stellar combat. And so far, the characters have looked pretty good for the most part. Half the cast is practically furries at this point, but there's a lot of characters in this game that can fit pretty much anybody's taste. And that's going to be really big. That's going to help carry the game. The combat's going to help carry the game. And of course, like I just said, the characters, bro. The characters are so important. The characters are where the sales come in. The combat is what keeps us around, right? That's what makes us play the game. But part of why we stick around is also the characters. The characters are what make the money. It's the banners pulling for the characters. That's where the money comes in, and that's what helps fund the game. Obviously, investors will put their money into the game, and we don't ever have to worry about that. As long as there's enough players actively playing the game, they will see player retention numbers, and they'll get some money from investors. But we also have to fund the game as well as the players. And, whales, light spenders, etc., they will be funding the game through the character banners. So having great looking characters, which they do have, and stellar combat, those are the two most important things for the game, and so far they're looking pretty good with that. And we haven't even really seen any of the premium characters that are going to be coming down the line. That's when things are really going to turn up. They haven't even shown their trump cards yet, which are those premium banner characters. I can't wait to see what they do, because with characters like Nicole out there, and characters like apparently the furry community that love Lai Seon, who does look pretty cool, admittedly, he's a pretty cool looking dude, I can't wait to see what they do next with the characters. I cannot wait to see. Like, we're probably going to see a big furry character and a big titty character, but let's be honest, we're probably excited about that. And at the end of the day, y'all, this is a Hoyoverse game, okay? These dudes don't know how to miss right now, okay? Success is the only thing they seem to understand at this particular moment in time. Say what you will, Genshin could never blah, 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 blah. Look, I'm with it. I wish Genshin would improve some things, right? But at the end of the day, it's still an incredibly successful game, even when it's not doing as well as normal. I mean, it's usually right at the tippy top of most successful or most profitable games out there in the world right now, is usually between Genshin Impact and Honkai Star Rail. Two games, both made by Hoyoverse, dude! This game is destined to be a success. Even if it's not as, successful as Honkai Star Rail or Genshin, it's probably still going to do very, very well. I mean, even Honkai Impact 3rd, the game they made before Genshin Impact, that game is still doing pretty darn well for a gacha game. It's still competing with other gacha games. Yeah, lower on the totem pole, lower on the ladder, sure, but they still make enough money to profit, or they wouldn't be making that game anymore. They'd find some way to basically let that thing, fall to the wayside if it wasn't making the money, right? It's still making money. Even though it's not doing as well as they might want it to do, they don't really care. For example, they could add localization for Honkai Impact 3rd, and they could add English voice acting and other countries' voice acting to the game, and they could make more money on that game if they cared to, but they don't care to. They already have an established audience that continues to play their game, and they're good to go with that. They're happy. They're fine with that, right? But Zenless Zone Zero is a game that they're going to be investing more time and effort and money into, and so they want to see this game succeed. So they're going to do their darndest to make sure that it does, even if it takes a little bit of hard work and elbow grease to make it get there. Genshin doesn't see as much improvements as, like Honkai Star Rail has seen, because Genshin has an already established audience. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? Why do they need to fix their game if most of their player base is already happy, right? So as long as we're adamant with Zenless Zone Zero, and we let them know the things that we want them to improve on, and we fight with our wallet on it in the early stages like we've seen with Wuthering Waves, they probably will do these things, like we saw with the Zenless Zone Zero's TV system. They changed that because we made our voices heard. So, I would say continue to do that, and we'll probably continue to see them improve this game along the way. Okay, so to help drive home what I'm saying about this Zenless Zone Zero furry situation here, we have Lai Seon, if I'm saying that name correctly. I'm probably not. Correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. This dude is literally a wolf guy. Like, he's literally a full-blown furry, bro. Like, the full tilt furry. And nothing against furries, by the way. Just, I'm just saying, and I'm just pointing it out. This dude has 2.4 million views, dog. It's been 3 weeks for his character demo that released 3 weeks ago, right? If you compare him to this other character here from 2 months ago, so this has had time to build up viewership, this only has 258k views, bro. This dude has well over 2 million views than this other character here, which is insane. And Koleda looks actually pretty darn cool in my personal opinion. Now let's compare him to maybe some other heavy hitters. Like, we're going to compare him to Nicole and Nekomata. Nekomata is kind of like one of those short stack characters here on the right. They also had a character demo like 2 months ago, right? A lot of these short stack characters do pretty well because a lot of the player base for gacha games are relatively young. Even though this game has I think an M for mature rating on it, some younger players are still going to end up playing it anyway. Anyways, 1.4 million views for this person, right? This Nekomata. That's 1 million views less than Lai Seon. And she's also kind of like a furry character. She's like a cat girl or something like that. Not quite a full-blown furry, but you know what I mean? Like, this dude is a straight-up full-blown furry, and he's pulling numbers, okay? This guy's pulling big dick numbers around here, okay? Now, if we compare to Nicole's teaser trailer, believe it or not, she only has 300,000 views. Now, there might be a reason for this, okay? And her character demo is not quite hitting 1 million. You know what I mean? Not quite. Now, the reason for this might be because they nerfed her boobs. Like, literally, like, they nerfed her boobs, I think, the same week this trailer came out. Like, right before this trailer came out, they nerfed her boobs, the size of them, the physics of them, and they even changed her animations, which are less like they just don't look as good. So even with a character like Nicole, who they're banking on pulling big numbers, the furries are actually outperforming them in their character demos and their character previews right now, which is insane to think about. The furry community is going to carry this game, even if this game doesn't end up being that good. And I've already spoken to people in the furry community as well as the cosplay community, and they all unanimously agree that furries have big pockets. They're big spenders, and they tend to spend a lot on things that are like about furries, such as Nekomata or Lysayon, who are furry-esque or full-blown furry characters. And so Zenless Zone Zero is hitting a bit of a niche because they're like the only big gacha game that is even catering to these people. So, will Zenless Zone Zero be a success despite some of the negative feelings that some players had in the earlier stages of its development? Well, I do think it's going to be a success. I think a lot of people feel like it's going to be a success. It is a Hoyoverse game at the end of the day. Now, just because it's a Hoyoverse game doesn't mean it's bulletproof, but it does mean that there's going to be a lot of funding and the development team are going to be able to fix issues if they ever come about. They have the funding to fix the game or make the game better if it is suffering for whatever reason. And despite some of the issues that players found in the earlier stages, we have already seen improvements to those systems. So I think that they're already willing to make those changes if they are necessary. It's a bit tough to say what the intended lifespan is for Zenless Zone Zero because it's an instance-based game. Instance-based games like this could have a very, very big scope, or they could have a little bit more of a tight-knit scope. It's a bit hard to say right now what their intended game plan is for the game right now, but when you put millions of dollars into a development of a game like this, they need to recoup their costs, and so this game's probably going to be around for a pretty long time, a significant number of years. I mean, dude, Honkai Impact 3rd has been around for over 7 years, okay? And Genshin Impact seems like it's intended to have a Genshin Impact 2 come out someday. And that game has been out for like, what, 4 years now? That's crazy. Okay, so Zenless Zone Zero is probably going to be around for a pretty long time. It's going to get carried by people that enjoy the combat, it's going to get carried by Hoyoverse themselves, and it's going to get carried by people like the furry community. So, if you found any of this informative or helpful in any way, shape, or form, consider leaving a like and subscribe. Let me know if you feel like Zenless Zone Zero is going to be a success, or any other gacha games like maybe Project Mugen, who I will be making a video for soon. Anyways, I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.